Well, for years the Conservative government had had their conventions, and they had brought forth privatizing the liquor business, and it had passed with a majority, and then of course leadership changes and times change, so that when Ralph came in, that was the first thing at the convention. That was the one that had come up first. Now, we had looked at a lot of changes coming, so we said we'll use the liquor privatization as the first introduction to getting government out of roles we don't believe we should be in. And we had a whole list of them, and for some reason I became the architect of many of those. And so when I took it to cabinet, I took them several models, and I said, you know, we have the American model, where they have it in grocery stores and corner stores and that sort of thing, wine, or I says with standalone liquor stores, and that's the one they wanted. So we proceeded, and within 6 to 8 months we were down and out and going. When we studied outsourcing, privatization, and those types of vehicles, the faster you do it, the better it is, because if you draw it out in government, people change, ministers change, the timing has to be right. You have so many that will mount up against it for all kinds of reasons, and so it was important that we got it done and sold to stores so that it wouldn't unravel and become a mutant where you had partial privatization. Those are the worst models, and I know other provinces are afraid to move because of the political nature of liquor in our society. But when they go to partial privatizations, they get into all kinds of trouble. Why? Well, they create monopolies, they create individual political selections of people who get the stores, the licensing, it becomes a problem, competition. And you've always got control, then you've got this huge bureaucracy that must license them and look after them. So I'm sure there'll be lots of pundits who talk about another model, but this one has worked. Studies done by Parkland Institutes and others that always come out on that left side. They're university people, and their main job is to take a critical analysis rather than balanced. That's what I say that, but you can balance it in your own articles. But they'll come out and say we didn't raise enough money, we lost money. That we set the amount of tax we wanted to collect, and we left it there for a long time. So you can say that, but it's not true. We just didn't raise the tax. And now we're taking more money than we did. We took about 400 and some million in the beginning, and we're taking 620 now, and we raised the tax a little while back. So there's one criticism. The other criticism is consumption, exposure and consumption. And in Alberta, you have to study the demographics in order to lay any credibility to that statement. We've got a young population with higher incomes. We've got Fort McMurray and other places where we have a lot of import people, and their drinking habits may be different. And so you get those criticisms, and then you have Mad Alberta and those, and I have sympathy for all of them. I do, but that'll be there whether we have privatized or not.
Has it surprised you in how it's turned out in any aspect of privatization?
How well it's been accepted. I think if you took approval rating, you'll always have 20 to 30% against anything government does. I'm sorry, but I studied this because I did a lot of privatizations and outsourcing. But with an 80% approval rating in liquor privatization, I mean, that's unheard of on a general tone. So if you try to take it backwards, you'll be shocked. You can't do it.
You'd said before that the timing was right. Why was the timing right 20 years ago?
The timing was right because we had a government that for the first time had looked at what the role of government is. When Ralph Klein came in, he sat down, he says, let's look at all government programs and see what the role of government is, whether we should be in that business, and if we're not, should it be outsourced, privatized, or contracted. And so with Ralph and that group of the team that we had, we set out to balance the budget, pay off the debt, and to get government out of the business of being in business. And you know, it was just perfect timing. I mean, a lot of things we did, some of them shocked people, but in the end, the evolution was all fine, whether it was access network, or whether it was CKOA radios, or whether it was highway maintenance, and there was criticism all the way through, most of them, because there are two opinions on government's role. And so they said that there would be excess drinking. More access means more addiction, and that's never been proven. And so, we looked at models around the world. I mean, old civilizations, and that's not true. But to convince some people, you'll never will. That was one of them, and the other was crime. There'll be more crime, more stores, more crime. The police even backed off that one after a while, because they realized that having them situated in certain places, people were driving across Edmonton. I remember studying it one night to go to the last standing liquor store that was open until 11 o'clock at night. All the rest were closed.
Right.
Well, then you know who's driving. And so, and the break-ins weren't any greater than anything else. So the police had the crime issue against it. And then the general public were just nervous of the government losing control of this product. And then there were those that said that when we went to the flat tax, that wasn't a good tax. And so pundits were against that we wouldn't collect the same revenue.
Right.
And they said with the flat tax, our price and cost of liquor will go up. And some models did, because we were only taxing alcohol content now. Remember, before it was literally a sales tax. It was ad valorem, we call it. Whereas if it's a pretty bottle, well, we were taxing that. We weren't taxing alcohol. We were taxing the price of that bottle. And I said, look, if it's alcohol we're taxing, then all these bottles are 40% alcohol. We'll tax it evenly. Well, the supporters in the end, the people. Because in the end, you know, they were tired of 6 o'clock at night seeing the key turned in front of their face when they were just 5 minutes late. Saturdays and Sundays. They were tired of not having access to it. At events like rodeos and that, they'd have to travel miles to go to some town to get something to drink that night. Tourists were upset because they were closed. We were closed Mondays here. And you know, you close at 6 o'clock and you come into town, you go to the park, Provincial Park, you can't get a bottle of wine.
Right.
And so the public were great supporters in the end. And we put every bootlegger out of business.
Yeah.
And I remember one of the discussions I had at the time, I said, why should government employees, I says, change light bulbs and clean, and the private sector does all that very efficiently. They'll stay after work and do up the thing. So the overhead costs were the maintenance of those buildings, those 200 some sites. I mean, it cost a ton of money more than the private sector pays just for our maintenance alone, because we had different divisions that would have to do that. You know, I know it was great for them, $18 an hour to put Crown Royal in a brown paper bag. I said, but that's not reality. It isn't. You know, that's. I said, you know, Safeway tellers at that time were only making 12, and so only government could get away with that inefficiency.
Why did the government decide to keep the distribution aspect of it?
Because of the excise tax and the federal tax is in on this, and the provincial tax. And that's part of the control you have to have, or the leakage is unbelievable. If you go to other warehouses, they have to all be bonded, mind you. You would lose a ton of slippage. And we have to collect the tax first. Every bottle that's in every store in this province has paid the tax. And they can sell it for nothing if they want to, but you don't lose any money because it's already paid. I don't like to base my career on privatizing liquor. I mean, it is a successful one, but I just think that the whole general aspect of cutting government out of places that shouldn't have been, I'm happy with that. I think there's more could be done. When you start getting duplications and mounting services upon services in the government, it's a crying shame, and the federal government, provincial governments could do more now.
Such as?
Well, I'd say we've got an overload in social services. We've got to protect people against others and look after the less fortunate. But we've got all types of layers in children's services and foundations and big brothers, big sisters, and FCSS, and and anytime people go near that, the barbs come up politically, and nobody will touch it. So they like the layers. So we get regions of children's services, regions of this and regions of that, and offices, and if you go near it, the opposition says you're an insensitive, conservative government. We'll just keep wasting money. When the Parkland Institute says we lost that much, it's easy to say that because we didn't raise the taxes.
Right.
So if the Parkland Institute says we should have had a 10% increase in taxes every year, tell that to the people of Alberta that that's what you support. Don't just blame the government for losing the 1.5. Say we support big tax.
So you're saying that the savings to the consumer outweigh the loss of revenue.
Absolutely.
For the
Why would you want to
provincial
tax if that's sin taxes are a regressive tax, folks. Big Brother, that's Big Brother at its worst. We'll control you through excess tax when you know that the habit and the culture is going to buy it anyways.
Now, how about for looking at 20 years ago, what was promised to Albertans? More convenience, more selection, cheaper prices. Would you say that happened?
Yes, in spades. You now have close to 18,000 SKUs, and you probably had 2,200 when we privatized, at the most. What I mean by a SKU is one bottle. And now you can go all over the world, from 70 countries I think we bring it in from, or more, and you can have any wine you want, from Yugoslavia to China. All you got to do is go to a retailer and have him, and he gets bonded people and they bring it in. The pricing, the flat tax raised the price on some things and lowered it on others. So that was getting back to what I say. What business were we in? We were in the business of taxing alcohol, not the pretty bottle that Crown Royal was in.
Right.
But Crown Royal now is cheaper than when we privatized.
Like, is
on
that
average,
with?
On average, when you go at Christmas time and buy a bottle of Crown Royal at $21 or $19, it was $27 when we privatized. And so some wines went up because we went to a flat tax, of course. Right. But others came down. Why do you think they came in here and bought Courvoisier to go back to the restaurants in Quebec? When it dropped $80 a bottle, nobody said anything. So I said, the higher quality beverages, the poorer people can drink them now. Because they're paying the same tax as they did on 5 Star as they did on Crown Royal, or something better than that. So you see, the argument, you have to cover it all, not just that pinpointed. They'll take that item there and say it's higher priced than in BC, it's higher priced than here. No, take the average. And that's what these stories don't tell. And these pundits that are against it will come and only micromanage the true story. And so ask the consumer, if he travels, what he thinks.